Hello, my name is Ann Elizabeth Carter, and I come from Eureka Springs, Arkansas, in the Ozark Mountains. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to talk briefly about my experiences in the hopes that more people will come forward to normalize the experience. Because most of us know, maybe all of us know, that it's a very, very common experience and not something that is unusual, esoteric, bizarre, but something that's an ancient part of humanity. My experiences began as a very young child, and it is my understanding that this is a generational thing. Unfortunately, I don't have any living family members, so I'm not able to connect with those people to try to have a deeper understanding of how anyone else might have been affected. And I have no children either, so that lineage dies out with me. I am a writer and a musician. My background is as a professor in universities, community colleges, and local types of writers' workshops, helping people to write autobiography, poetry, speech making, and a particular emphasis on recording life stories for people, say, who have been in the Holocaust and are wanting to document some important historical facts. My own father was on the Bataan Death March and spent the Second World War in a death camp in Manchuria. My mother was suffering from an illness known as Huntington's disease, which we were unable to have diagnosed until the last few years of her life. Because of the unusual nature of my growing up and my interactions with my family, I was always a very introverted, inner-looking sort of person, and that stood me in very good stead in terms of wanting to have a better understanding of life's mysteries, and for that I am most appreciative. In particular, my interest is in the disparate elements that we experience as humans and how they come together into some sort of a cohesive experience. For instance, I have a dear friend who says that he works on a spaceship and identifies himself as being an alien. Many of us who have an artistic bent have the feeling that we are not necessarily from this world, but I don't think that that indicates for certain that that means graphically that we are not from this world. I remember one time in particular, in my early 20s, I was waiting tables at a restaurant in Indianapolis, and I was involved in a workplace accident which caused me to scald my hands very severely. The pain was unbelievable, and I had no money to go to the emergency room, so I was driving myself back to my apartment. And I began to just scream, "I want to go home, I want to go home." And I knew I didn't mean my apartment. I knew I didn't mean back to Arkansas. I knew that I meant someplace else. My particular experiences are a melange of psychic precognition, animal communication, UFO experiences, shape-shifting, a variety of things that to most people would seem quite odd and bizarre and incredible and unbelievable. And yet, as I said earlier, it is my belief that people are just not talking about these things for fear of being labeled as being weirdos. That doesn't really affect me because I don't have living family members, and there's no one who's going to be horribly ashamed of me or whom I'm going to embarrass with my own testimony. So for that, again, I have much gratitude. My friend who says that he works on a spaceship, his experience is that he can go at will to a ship that is circling the Earth, and that he has quarters there, and that his task, if you will, is to try to lessen the results of natural disasters such as hurricanes and volcanic eruptions. And also he places what he refers to as peace beehives, or beeskeeps, in areas where there is a lot of travail in the world, in the hopes that the vibrations from these beeskeeps give a comforting presence in those communities and in those countries. His tale is quite fascinating, and I think of worthy of further exploration. My involvement in UFOs began in the late 1980s after the publication of Whitley Strieber's Communion. As with many people, I had a very strong reaction to that book, and my husband at the time, who was a very, very intellectual, non-emotional sort of person, was reading the book with a look of absolute horror on his face. And I said, "John, what's that book about?" And he said ominously, "You'll just have to read it." So after reading it, there was a section in the back of the book. I think Whitley got much more than he was bargaining for, saying, "You can write to me and talk about your experiences." And I understand he got an overwhelming amount of letters that his wife volunteered to read, and that those letters have been categorized and are in an archive at Rice University. So I wrote to Whitley and asked, is there anything that I can do? At that time there was a publication known as the Communion Letters, and I was okayed, appointed, whatever you want to say, to be the Western New York researcher for the Communion Letters. It was my great pleasure to go to people's homes and interview them, ask them about their experiences, record it all longhand, and send it to the Striebers. I suppose some of those publications might be at Rice University. It would be fascinating to see those after all of these years. It's interesting how modern technology that we have now has allowed us to have so much better communication in terms of networking, seeing other people's experiences, as opposed to having to go through all kinds of gyrations trying to find anyone else who might have had these experiences, trying to find anyone else to contact, trying to find anyone else to just simply be able to speak without being immediately assigned to the loony bin. I've only met a handful of people who will fess up to their own involvement, and yet practically anyone that I meet, if I tell them I'm interested in this subject, immediately they will even say, I had an experience, or they will say, I know someone who had an experience, or they will say, I watch these shows all the time about this experience. I know for many of us, we have thought, will there come a day where there is disclosure, or is this simply going to only be pushed farther and farther and farther into the future without people really knowing what is going on? I try not to get my hopes up about any of that, and yet in recent years, with David Grush's testimony to the government, and then also with Lisa Elizondo's book, Imminent, which came out in the last few months, I do have a slight bit more hope that there will be some more indications about what is really going on. The only theory I have about the whole subject is that these so-called visitors are what we might refer to as the progenitors. I suppose that word means the the very ancient ancestors. And so I guess that is what I might have to say about my part in these experiences.